I'm sorry, I'm having internet problems like crazy. I don't know what's going on with my internet. Welcome to Horror Syndicate Discourse. If you can see me, yep, we're live. If you can't, I'm sorry. We're talking about The Shining tonight, and maybe I won't be able to. Let's see. Okay, you guys are definitely moving. So Nate, Seth, and Jared are here, and we're talking about The Shining. Can you guys hear me at all?
Yep. Can you hear us?
Just go on without me. This is a joke. I can't.
What's up, Luke?
It might be my computer.
Can you hear us? Doesn't sound like Ray can hear us. Are we coming through? Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Can anybody out there in Facebook land hear us?
Luke says yes.
Okay.
Joe says he can hear us.
All right, cool. Well, let's hopefully that Ray can get on. So let's talk about first time we saw it. We usually kind of start there. So do you guys remember the first time you got to see The Shining?
Yeah, I was actually trying to figure it out last week. I missed the entire third act of Alien, trying to pinpoint exactly how old I was. I would say I was between 10 and 12 when I first saw it, and it was on TV. It was edited for TV, and it scared the fuck out of me. And it fascinated me. Anytime it was on TV, I had to watch it. And I remember I was really excited for that TV miniseries that they did in, what was it, 96? Because
Steven Weber.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the movie at that point. But yeah, I was anywhere between 10 and 12, and it definitely had an effect on me. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think I was probably around that tweener age, preteen, for sure. Yeah, I don't remember watching the actual version as it was, so it was probably a TV version because I don't remember some of the, nudity that happened in it. But that movie actually gave me nightmares, and it wasn't just because of the twins. It was just coming from the first aspect of when I first saw it, like it was a haunting film. Like I don't think I slept right for that. I sleep pretty good for the most part, but I don't think I slept good for a couple of days. But it really fucked with me a little bit. I would say it's mostly the twins, but at the same time, it just we'll get into it a little bit more in thick later on. But just Jack Nicholson's transformation, just seeing him so maniacal, and for me at that age, like he was the Joker. Like
Yeah.
he wasn't that fucking scary, but he was kind of scary. But that was scary. Like
That's something you don't hear, but I remember always thinking that, like, this was a movie star. This was somebody we were comfortable with and knew. Of course, he had a dark side to him, but at the same time, like, he's terrifying in this movie, and it's like he's a movie star. Like, you don't really usually you can't usually separate the two. Like, oh, I know Tom Hanks, he can't be scary. I mean, that's kind of how it is. Like, he's one of the biggest movie stars in the world. And it's one of the most terrifying roles or performances, which kind of gets into, I saw it about the same time, about 12 years old, 11 years old. My mom watched it with me. And the twins, that scene where he comes around the corner and sees the twins, just fucking chills. I mean, it just really hits you. All the hair stands up on your arms and everything. But just the overall tone of it, I still think it's easily one of the 5 scariest films ever made. I know some people don't. Some people think it's garbage, whatever. But I just think it's effective. But let's talk about Jack Nicholson while you brought him up. He was Kubrick's first choice. And one of the big things, of course, we all know that Stephen King did not like the film. And a lot of it's because he felt Kubrick got Jack Torrance wrong. And Jack plays him like a scary dude from the beginning. And, I get that. I get that it was a personal story for King. And I get that he misses that we don't see the deterioration of this really nice guy because of the alcohol, because of the overlook. But to me, I wonder if I would have been as scared of Jack if he hadn't been that way the whole time. Like, I'm scared of Jack from frame 1, Like, this guy looks like a powder keg to me. Like, it's just
when he's meeting with the hotel manager, he's just staring at him, blank face. Like,
he's got that fake smile on it. Like, you can tell he's already got a mask on, which is a big thing about the movie. Is like, it's all about wearing a mask, and he wears a mask. He does what he has to do to get through it, like get by, which is, maybe that's something that, Stanley, people said, Stanley wasn't the warmest guy. Although people who knew Stanley, actually met Stanley, said he was very warm, very kind, and not who people expected or thought he was. But, I just wonder if I had seen Jack as this sympathetic, relatable guy, if I would have been as scared of him when he turned. Because, like, I think about, like, Dr. Sleep. I wasn't really scared of Ewan McGregor when he turned at the end of the movie. If Jack Nicholson had done that same thing where but at the same time in the novel, he's not incredibly likable.
No, he's not. He's not entirely innocent either.
No,
he did hurt Danny.
Yeah.
Recovering alcoholism. Yeah.
But the thing, since you mentioned the whole thing with Stephen King, I love Stephen King. I love his work. His work has been a big influence on me. But the fact that he still kind of talks down on this movie, and yet he endorsed The Dark Tower.
Well, it's like, dude. People are on the fence about that, but I despite those people, Stanley Kubrick will go down as one of the 50 greatest filmmakers. He is one of the 50 greatest filmmakers of all time, easily.
Oh yeah.
And Mick Garris can't compare to him. Stephen King can't compare to him. Just like, he's on another planet. Mm-hmm. Like, Stanley Kubrick is so incredible at what he did. Have you guys seen this movie, Film Worker, yet?
No.
If you all haven't seen this film, it's about Leon Vitali, who was an actor, and he was kind of coming up in the late 60s, early 70s. He got cast in Barry Lyndon. Barry Lyndon was his big break, working with Kubrick, but he was on the rise. And after working with Stanley on Barry Lyndon, he was so in awe of this man and his work and how important he knew he was, that he quit acting just to become Stanley's assistant. And he was with Stanley all the way up to his passing. And he worked on The Shining was his first movie. He worked as an assistant. Full Metal Jacket, Eyes Wide Shut. He went through it all, and he wasn't just his assistant. He did everything. And he learned from Kubrick, and Kubrick took him in. But this guy dedicated his life to helping Stanley Kubrick make art. Like, gave up his dream, gave up everything to basically be almost a slave to Stanley Kubrick. Now, how many people are that fucking genius that someone believes in you that much that they'll sacrifice their own life to help make sure you get to make your movies, and help you? And as far as on The Shining, like, Leon Vitali deserves some credit, because on The Shining, he was basically in charge of Danny. And he became Danny Lloyd said that Leon became his best friend on set, and he was Danny's acting coach. He took care of him. Of apparently they were very, very protective of Danny Lloyd, and Stanley was very protective of him. It's the fact that Danny never knew that they were even making a horror film, and they acted like it was a drama. Like when Wendy's carrying Danny when she's scared and screaming, it's actually a dummy because they didn't have Danny do it. And Danny didn't even see the movie until he was 17, or like the full movie. And apparently Kubrick stayed in touch with him, sent him Christmas cards every year, called him up and congratulated him when he graduated high school. So, but Leon Vitali, that Film Worker movie is just extraordinary. It's just amazing to watch a guy who, and he knows everything. I mean, the work he put in, he would go on scout. He would do scouting. He would work on the color grading. He did almost every aspect of Stanley's movies, not just the movies he made while he was with him, but back catalogs. And when they were released, like, The Killing or Dr. Strangelove or something, he worked on those releases and and the advertising, because Kubrick was so detail oriented, so involved in everything, and he would have Leon basically as his right hand. Okay, I just ranted a lot. So
no, I mean that's
yeah.
That's a testament to Stanley Kubrick too. Like somebody that's willing to just drop whatever the fuck they're doing with their career in life and just, I want to follow this man because he's got the right way to go.
Yeah, someone said it's like Stanley Kubrick was more like, there was something about him that 90% of the world doesn't have. Like, you're in the presence of a real master. So it'd be like meeting Da Vinci or something. Like, oh fuck me, I'm with I'm with Da Vinci. I'm gonna be his model, or I'm gonna carry his paints around for him. That's what I'm gonna do, because I'll never be. But I just want to be part of that genius and that masterful. And he learned. Stanley taught him everything he knew about lenses and lighting and which cam he gave him. He gave him a camera and taught him how to take photography, and he just absorbed it all. And they said no one knows more about Stanley's work and Stanley than Leon, because he was that intimate with him as far as working with him through all that stuff. It's a good documentary. As far as Danny, there was one that was kind of funny. They had like they called the Book of Lies, because they had, when you're a kid, you can't work so many times, especially over in England when they were filming it. I think he could only work like 4 hours a day or 3 hours a day, which, if you know Kubrick, he did all those takes and everything. It must have been. So I think they called it the Book of Lies because they were kind of fibbing on how much time he was doing it. But I thought that was funny. And then, like, just other things about Danny was like the whole Tony thing. I'm getting feedback. You guys hear that?
Yeah, I do hear it.
Huh. Anybody want to go? I got a list of stuff, but I don't want to take it.
Yeah, I mean, like, if we have a line of direction, I guess. Like you were saying, I mean, Kubrick already like totally cemented himself with 2001. So I mean, like, in my opinion, he could do no wrong after that. But I think Seth had already stated, like, there was such a division between him and Stephen King during the production of this movie. It's like, when you watch it versus reading the book, like, I don't necessarily see it as trumping the book, but taking it in a different direction that is actually like giving the book its praise. And I don't think Stephen King acknowledged it at the time. It doesn't seem like he still is, but it's one of those things, like, especially when it comes with book adaptations to movies, like, you're always wanting to try to appease the author of the book. It didn't seem like he wanted to do that with Stephen King, and I think that's why he got fucking pissy. Like, yeah,
especially being such a personal story. It was kind of Stephen's own battle with alcoholism and his own demons, and so
Right.
That's the thing. Once a filmmaker takes your book or your script, it's not yours anymore. And if someone's going to take it, it's fucking Stanley Kubrick, man. It's going to be a Stanley Kubrick movie at that point. Like you can't. And I think Stanley's actually pretty close to it. There's only slight changes to it, and the changes he made, I think, are better. I actually do. I think that, like Wendy is one thing. People thought that Shelley Duvall was miscast, and apparently Jack Nicholson wanted Jessica Lange, but Stanley picked Shelley Duvall because he liked her eccentric, she was different, she was vulnerable, and so people said, well, that Wendy was very strong in the book, and she was like a cheerleader or something. She was like a, confident, strong woman, beautiful woman. And Stanley was like, well, I don't believe that woman would fucking put up with Jack Torrance.
Yeah. Shelley Duvall brings like a dry, sarcastic, like not in your face, but just something that's going to drive into
Well, she's someone
who's your mind.
She's someone who kind of probably, to me, Shelley's Wendy is someone who's dependent on Jack. Like, she's meek. She's not someone who is confident and could, like, if she were, she would just leave that guy. Out of all the stuff he's done, the alcoholism, hurting her kid, dragging them to a hotel, all these things he's done, he's just a failure after failure after failure. And he's a violent person. He's hurt her child. Even though he promised, she's still timid about him. He still shows things. So
I guess that's sarcastic, but she's still questioning him, even though after everything that's happened, she was saying, "You sure you want to do that?"
Yeah, and that
sure we want to do that,
and that just infuriates him. She just she pushes his buttons, but she's also aware of he's going to blow up, or she's scared of it. Like, oh, I got to maintain Jack. And I don't think if you had a woman who was in charge and very confident and, could have had her choice of men, I don't know if she would put up with that kind of guy.
Well, the Wendy from the book worked with the Jack from the book.
Yeah.
And the Wendy from the movie worked with the Jack from the movie.
Yeah.
In terms of how the characters were. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what is, like I said, Kubrick's interest was making a scary movie. Like, that's what he wanted to do. Like, all his contemporaries were making these great horror movies, like William Friedkin with The Exorcist, and, Roman Polanski with Rosemary's Baby, and Brian De Palma with Carrie, and all this was going on. And apparently Kubrick had said something to a friend in the 60s saying, I would like to make the scariest movie ever made. Because he saw an intellectual challenge in that genre, and that it was kind of a code cracker thing, so he wanted to do it. So he was looking for a scary film, like something, and that's what his intentions were. He wasn't looking to tell a story about a guy who was alcoholic and broken down and losing his battle to the personal thing. He just wanted to scare the shit out of people, and I think that's what it is. Like Jack Torrance, he kind of felt that Stephen King tries to explain Jack's problems too much. His psychology clutters it up. He said Stephen King, he thought it was one of the best books he'd ever read in the genre. He thought it was genius. He loved the plot. He just thought that King is more about his ideas than caring for his writing. Like, he doesn't see him as a writer's writer kind of thing. He sees him as a guy with great ideas and great imagination, but not a caring or composer of literature. And he thinks he clutters stuff, which he does. That's one of King's biggest criticisms, is that he just goes way too much into detail and way too much stuff that really doesn't matter. And that's what he has to do as a guy adapting a novel, is take out the clutter and say, I don't need all this. None of this is important. Like, this is my intention, which is to dive into dark and light, because that's what we're doing. We talked about that on Dr. Sleep, of Danny is light and Jack is dark, but you have to have both, duality. And Kubrick was, and Diane Johnson, we should mention Diane, who was a co-writer. they studied Freud and Carl Jung and all this and duality and everything to find out what scares people, and if there's light, there has to be dark. If something good happens, then there's going to be an evil part of it as well, and that's what it is. Like the Overlook feeds on Danny's light and feeds on on Jack's darkness, and they're using Jack's darkness to get to Danny's light. And so, we talked about a lot of that stuff on the Dr. Sleep episode last week, but again, that's what Kubrick's vision was to make a scary movie. Ray's here.
Welcome back, Ninja. And Ninja Dust, he's back in.
It's not working? Wow.
What? It looked like it was working to me.
It's another thing too is it's tough to adapt books and do them faithfully to begin with, especially with Stephen King, who writes a lot. Like his books are usually beyond what a traditional novel is in length. And it's been a while since I've seen the TV miniseries version, which I know is supposed to be more faithful.
Yeah.
So I don't really remember that, but thinking back on the book, I don't know if it would really have worked in Kubrick's film to have all those scenes of Jack researching everything that happened in the hotel.
Yeah.
I don't think that would have really worked with this movie at all. It would have kind of slowed it down even more. I mean, it's already a slow-paced film as is. It's a slow burn, and it's fantastic how he does it. But I think it would have slowed it down even more. So I prefer Stanley Kubrick's version over the book.
Yeah, you got to do it visually. You can't give exposition,
Yeah.
and show don't tell. So he's got to figure out a way to do that without like just boring the shit out of the audience. And so like condensing things, like when Jack goes to get the job in the book, it's a long thing where he's talking to Ullman, then he's talking to what's the guy, Watson.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks, he's talking to these guys. And so Ullman in the book, of course, doesn't like Jack, doesn't trust Jack, doesn't want to give him the job but the thing is, Ullman isn't an asshole. People think he's an asshole, but he's just very proud of the hotel and takes his job seriously and wants to protect it. Whereas Bill Watson's like, fuck that guy, and I've been here forever, and like, so there's this curl, right? But I love, one thing I noticed watching it again was like, what Kubrick does is he makes Ullman kind of nice and welcoming, but Bill Watson, who was a talker in the book, because even Jack Halloran says that to them later, is like, that guy never shuts up, just runs his mouth. But in the movie, Bill's just sitting there like observing, and what I like is it's subtle, because it's like if you watch him, especially when Ullman starts bringing up Grady and what happened, Watson's appearance changes, and the way he looks at Jack, it's almost like he's playing the Ullman character, where he doesn't trust Jack, or maybe he senses something to Jack, but there's a coldness to Watson, and there's also just there's a tension there that Kubrick, because there's tension in the book between them, but it's all verbal, where the guy's bitching about Ullman. But in this, you could tell by the way Ullman observes and listens, that there's a tension and a dislike and a mistrust. And even like there's the one line he has where Ullman tells Wallace to get, or Bill Watson, this Watson, not Wallace, to take their bags up, and he says,
Fine.
Yeah. It's like, it's rarely passive aggressive, like fine, like fuck you. It's like almost like fuck you to him.
Well, yeah, and the look that you were talking about, I mean, they go over that in that documentary I told you to watch. Yeah.
I haven't watched it since it came out, and I didn't really want to go back to it.
Disgust, yeah, and the look, he's given like a evil look whenever he's talking about Grady, and yeah.
Which doc you're talking about?
Room 237.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
I
great
haven't seen
documentary.
that shit in like 6 years or something. Wow,
It's,
it's been on for a while.
It's a long
That is a
time.
really good documentary, though.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get to rewatch that one. I knew you were, Ray, so I figured I'll let you have all that
There's
info.
too
Because
much
like,
to even retain from that, honestly. There is so much going on in that between the Indian burial ground idea, all the product placement, the moon landing.
Yeah, the different theories that come
Yeah,
in.
there's so much to unpack from that. We'd have to do a whole show on that, honestly.
one cool thing I did see, I don't know if it was in that doc, but this guy, I watched a quick like 5-minute video, and he was talking about, of course, Kubrick's style is that he uses a lot of the center framing symmetry, which plays into the duality again. There's doubles through this whole movie. Like there's a lot of mirrors used. There's a lot of the twins, of course. Then there's like when they're doing the walkthrough or when they're taking Wendy around. There's two groups of two women that walk by and tell Ullman goodbye and all that. So there's always this duality. There's the symmetry. There's all this stuff. But he was pointing out how everything's horizontal. There's all these horizontal lines through the whole movie. Like if you look like he shoots at center frame and kind of flat shots, and but there's always straight lines, like the upper level, or there's a line in the divide in the wall. If you watch the whole movie, he was pointing out all these horizontal lines, but the first time the lines go this way and skew is the moment where Wendy is reading the book, all play and all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. It's almost like all that was set up to subliminally make you show that she realizes he's off. Like her husband's nuts.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it made sense, but at the same time, I think it could just be that she's looking at the typewriter, and the shot is that way, so everything's level, and she looked over this way to look at the paper stack, and the camera's now looking this way. So you couldn't do it that way unless she moved over to look at it that way and keep it level. So I was like, it could just be that it's because her perspective has changed and the point of view has changed. But it was a cool, interesting thing because it makes sense. Scariest moment? What's the scariest moment in The Shining?
It was in room. The moment that got me was the lady in the bathtub. That was what got me when I was a kid, more so than the twins.
That moment just got me saying, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
It's that laughing. That laughing of that's like just creepy.
Yeah.
But the twins, to me, is the reveal in the hallway is what got me, I think, the most. The perfect music, the pacing, the fact that we've watched. This is the third time we've been behind Danny going through the hallways, and that great sound of on the carpet wood. It's just, which we also echo in the maze chase at the end. You can hear it in the soundtrack of that, and that's the cool thing. Also, the maze edition in the movie, because it echoes the hotel, because it's the hotel itself is a maze, and you're going around corners and getting lost. And
it says that early on, and when she's getting the tour.
Yeah, it's and what we have to mention is the use of the Steadicam in this film. That movie could only exist because of the Steadicam. That Steadicam influenced the style, the corridors, the way, because you could not achieve those shots without the Steadicam. And the Steadicam had only been around. The guy, Garrett Brown, who invented it, I think Marathon Man was the first movie he used it on, like Rocky, where he's going up the stairs. When they go up the stairs in Rocky, that was a Steadicam. It was one of the early second use.
Marathon Man's a great movie.
So Stanley contacted Garrett and asked him about it and said, and he goes, how low can you go with that? And he was thinking, because I'm going down to Danny's level behind that trike. So when they're on that trike, he's actually they're pushing Garrett in a wheelchair with the Steadicam behind them. And the only way to get those fluid shots, Stanley explained it's like you're on a magic carpet with the Steadicam. But he was like, I've heard people criticize the movie. Someone, I can't remember who it was. I don't want to say it was Fred Decker because I talked to Fred. But I think no, it wasn't Fred. Someone said that it was like a commercial for the Steadicam, the whole movie. But the thing is, there's a purpose for it. It wasn't showing off. It wasn't. It's like there's a purpose behind the Steadicam movement because it just gives a whole movie. So they said it's almost like the hotel is creeping behind everybody and coming up on you. What's that?
That's an interesting sound effect.
These a big little sound effect with a truck drove over a bridge and back to sleep.
My scariest moment is kind of one of those cliche moments. It's the bathroom scene. Like, obviously it's one of the most iconic scenes of the movie, but it's, that is legitimately terrifying.
Yeah.
12-year-old me was terrified of the naked lady in the bathroom. For sure. Yes. What am I going to do with an old naked lady? I don't know. But no.
What do you do with an old naked woman?
No.
That scene actually matches up to the scene where we see Danny in his apartment back in Bangor, or is it? No, it's Boulder, Colorado, right? Where he's talking to Tony in the mirror. If you look, there looks like there's a shadow behind the curtain in that scene, and the same music's played in those two scenes.
So rewatch it again. Thanks a lot.
And obviously the chase through the maze is also terrifying too. Like, that's just good cinematography all the way. It may not be the scariest scene in the movie, but it's definitely one of the most tense scenes of the movie.
Dayton Carper used Steadicam. Yeah, Halloween in the opening. Yeah. Same guy. The guy that Garrett Brown was the camera operator on Halloween, on Rocky, on The Shining. He was the guy who invented the Steadicam. So, yeah, he did that on Halloween. In fact, I think he shot Rocky too, and Stanley kind of fucked him on it because he had to be done by a certain time, but Stanley went over schedule. So, like, he had to get back to do Rocky 2 over in the States and do Shining in England. And it was kind of, I guess Ray's still having trouble.
That is interesting, though. I didn't know any of that. That's fascinating. Okay.
One of my favorite things about this movie, and I mentioned it in our little chat, was last night, I think, is the music and the sound design, the score and the sound design. It really adds to the atmosphere. It really helps sell the movie as being creepy, even with nothing happening. It sells like those small moments of like Jack kind of seeming a little unhinged, like even early on, and when Danny starts having the visions, and even with the chase at the end. I wish I knew more about music so I could articulate this more, but like just some of the score during those moments is really, really awesome, and it really adds to the horror and the atmosphere and the suspense.
Which is the atmosphere word is like everything for this movie. The atmosphere of this film, and a lot of the music to me is like there's a lot of where it's just like seems like there's a note, and then a strike of a horn or strike of a brass or something or percussion, where it's like it's just timed and it's all edited to it. And knowing Kubrick, I'm sure it was precisely. Because from what I read, John Williams was supposed to score the movie, and they tossed that, and I guess I don't even know if he even recorded anything, but he just used a lot of classical music from the 60s, from a couple of composers, and a lot of other classical things like that opening. Talking about that opening shot of the little island over the water, and then like the helicopter shots of the Sidewinder Road and that music.
Yeah.
that music is so foreboding, and then like they re-recorded it with synthesizer and just voices, and it's just haunting right from the get-go. And it's just beautiful. Like I watched a video of a guy who's like does drones, and he said they even did this with a helicopter. This looks so amazing. Like the shots are gorgeous. And the guy that shot him said like he didn't have a rig to shoot it. He's just like, I'm basically hanging out of the helicopter with bungee cord to get these shots for Stanley. He goes, but that's the kind of shit you do for Stanley Kubrick. He goes, I wouldn't do it for anybody else.
That would give me a funny transition. What would Shelley Duvall do for Stanley Kubrick?
That's a good thing to talk about. Is like that's one of the notorious things. I hear a lot of people hate Stanley for how he treated her, and he gets a lot of negative press for what he puts his actors through. Jack Nicholson said it was the hardest thing he'd ever done. Definitely, he'd never seen an actress go through a harder time than Shelley Duvall did. Angelica Houston apparently said that Jack would come home from shooting The Shining, just go right into the bedroom and be out because he was just exhausted. And so, but Shelley Duvall, of course, is notorious that he treated her like shit and like didn't let people sympathize with her or because he was trying to get her to where she needed to be to give that performance. And it's so fucking real. Like I believe she is in terror and just everything about what she goes through, not only Jack, but her son, when he totally goes catatonic and is just, I'm Tony, Danny isn't here. What is she going to do? She has no one to give her help. She has nowhere to run to. She's terrified. And it's like, she's so effective at that. I think she doesn't get enough credit for how good she is. And she said in hindsight, she goes, I would do it again for Stanley. He was just trying, he was helping me get to that place. Even though it was hard, I would do it again for him.
Which is a weird thing to think, like directors, if they're not getting what they want, like right away, she's out. Like, would they recast her? Like, but he stuck with her, and obviously, I mean, it's from the documentary I saw, like there's been like discrepancies on how bad she was affected by it, but I mean, he was just trying to get the best out of her as an actress, and Jack Nicholson obviously didn't really have too much of a difficulty. Like you said, it's his hardest, but I mean, he was already in character. It wasn't like Stanley Kubrick was pushing for that vengeance and that action with him every scene, every cut.
Well, I mean, a lot of movie sets too are very tense, and it all really depends on the director. And I was actually watching a making of feature that was on the recent Blu-ray release, and it was all footage shot by Kubrick's daughter Vivian, and she actually did audio commentary for that making of, and she was just talking about, just like he was really just trying to get her in character. Like, and you can kind of see, like, there's no spite on his face when he looks at Shelley Duvall. And in particular, I know that he got really mad at her for not showing up on time for one particular sequence, but he was you can see in the documentary, he comes into the room, he seems like, casual, nice, whatever, but he says little things to kind of just push her a little bit, and it all depends on the director. There's some people who really are meticulous about what they get their actors to do.
Yeah, like I don't have that in me. I can't do that to my actors, but at the same time, everyone's different. Like, and that's the thing. Like, I don't. He got it. That's why I look at it. He got what he needed, and maybe. I mean, actors work differently. Some actors are different from other actors, and you have to balance with that. And with Kubrick, it's like, again, Wendy needed to be alone. She needed to feel helpless and alone, and like alone in this. She had to, and I think that's what he did. Is he was picking on her and bullying her and knocking her down because Jack's knocking her down. And I think he was telling the cat, other people not to coddle her or support her or sympathize with her because he needs her to feel completely helpless and alone in all of this, because that's what Wendy's feeling. And again, it translates. I see it. And it sucks that she got nominated for Razzies and shit. People said it was one of the worst performances of the year. It is I don't see that. I've rarely seen that level of fear and confusion and helplessness in a performance.
Frantic.
Yeah.
It's because she comes across annoying. I think that's why she gets Razzies and stuff, because she does come across annoying.
Well, before the second and third act, yeah, I mean, I get that.
But also kind of very, very realistic too.
I think that, like I said, I think that's part of her character. She annoys them.
Yeah, and that's very easy for an artist. Like that. Jack Nicholson talked about that whole scene where he's typing and she interrupts him. He'd written too, and he said, "I've been there. I understand it." So some of that was ad-libbed. And I will confess, I am that way at times where if I'm focused and I'm working, if I'm editing or drawing or writing and someone comes in and interrupts that, it does fuck you up, especially writing. When you're writing, I mean, you're in a flow, your head, you're already 10 steps ahead and you're trying to get it out and you got it. And someone comes in, hey, what do you want for dinner? And it's like,
yeah, I'm like George McFly. What, Lorraine? What?
So it's like that line where she said, I just love the line where he's like, she's making small talk. That's what's even more infuriating. Like, you don't have anything to say to me. You're just trying to fucking chat. It's like, you just fucked me up. So she's like, the Weather Channel says it's going to snow tonight. What the fuck you want me to do about it? It's like, that's like, whatever fuck you hear me coming in here means I am working. And, and I think it's not just art. Like, if you're at your job, because that's the thing about being an artist, you work from home. So where people can think they can, hey, can you go here? Can you go this? You're not doing anything. Can you go do this? Like, I'm working. No, just because I'm here. So it'd be the same. Like, look, if you're at your job and you work on a computer, you're doing data entry or whatever it is you do, and someone comes up and interrupts you, you've lost your track. You lost where you were. You forgot your numbers or where you went. So that's the same thing. But our shit that we're keeping track of is in here, our thought process, our momentum, our motion. And so, that scene, I think every writer sees that scene and goes, fuck yeah, I know what that is. What that kind of feels right there. And Jack got it because he had said he'd actually had those outbursts with girlfriends and stuff where they'd interrupt him while he was writing. And as much as we hate to admit it, artists, we can be complete shitheads and assholes and self-absorbed and
I'm guilty of the same thing.
I think we all are.
Especially when I write, man. I don't like getting interrupted.
Yeah. Trying to concentrate.
Yeah.
Which also made me like the other confession, like one of the hard things about Jack, he keeps failing and he's got all this guilt and she keeps pushing that on him about, remember what you did to Danny? Because he even says that to, did your mom say that? Did your mom tell you I was going to hurt you? So it's like, I when my daughter was little, I was playing with her and I was going to pick her up and her elbow dislocated. I was just picking her up to play with her and I felt it go. And she just immediately screamed and was in pain. And I take her, and I just felt like I just wanted to die. I felt so horrible that I had caused her that pain, And I think Jack must have felt that way, even though he did it in anger. I was just playing with her. It was just a bad decision to grab her how I grabbed her. But I know what that felt like, to dislocate my child's elbow and see her screaming and know that I caused it and having to take her to the hospital and fix that. So, the fact that I hurt my child that he's dealing with and his wife won't let him forget it. Or she kind of makes those little comments like sometimes people do, where it's like they don't even realize they're pushing your button and you kind of endure it to the point where you have a breaking light, like, fuck, all right, I'm sorry.
You bring it back out of the file cabinet.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's understandable.
So Jack is human in Kubrick's movie. We see those things, but again, it's like it's also these artist things that artists are kind of that isolated. We're you know, it's like we get in our own heads, our own world, and you can see that of Jack in the movie. And the point where you need your privacy. He wouldn't have gone nuts if he'd been alone.
That's why he wanted the job.
Yeah.
So you think if he was alone, he wouldn't have gone nuts?
No, because they wanted Danny. I think is what they really wanted, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. There's
Scatman Carruthers. Yeah.
I mean, the spirits came to Danny immediately. So come play with us, Danny. Yeah, it's obviously that they wanted him, but
yeah, they were after him before he even got there.
yeah.
Well, I mean, even if he was alone and there was no ghost, there's still, cabin fever
Yeah,
that could have happened. If he was up there alone.
they were hard. Like it's just like in the movie, it's just days, isn't it? Because they count down the days, don't they? It's Thursday. Wednesday,
Yeah, I don't understand
Friday.
that because there's no way it's only a few days.
Yeah, I think it's just to elevate or accelerate the. I think Jack's already primed and ready to be. He's just in a bad position. He's just in a bad place in his life, and he's looking for answers. He's looking for redemption. He's looking for it, and that's why so much of what he is like he says on the stairs, like, I have taken responsibility. I have signed a paper. I've said that I will do this. This is all I have left. My name is he chooses his reputation and his word and all that. And, I mean, he's wrong. Yeah, he sells out. He sells his soul to the Overlook is basically what he's doing instead of looking out for his child, looking out for his wife, realizing, and it also has to do with the sight. Like, Danny sees the evil. He sees, which also goes into, didn't you say something about American history and the Native Americans and like history repeats itself. So Danny is seeing the past. He's seeing the problems. And Jack sees it, but he ignores it. He chooses his reputation and his career or the money over the danger. He looks past the danger for his own selfish reasons or his own pride or his own. Whereas Danny recognizes it, wants to go, but he's a kid. He's helpless. He's helpless. He can't get in a car and leave. He can't,
Yeah. Just to go back a little bit on the days that they count down, there is a couple time jumps in the movie. It's not just everything happens within a week. It's I think there was like a month jump from like after they first showed up and settled into the Overlook, and it keeps jumping. Then it goes to specific days and specific times. But
I was gonna say it was definitely at least a few weeks for sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they went there. It was October 30th when they said they closed the Overlook.
Oh yeah.
And when the movie ends, it's probably like January, February, something like that.
Okay. Now in the book, I think in the book, like they go through Thanksgiving and all that. I think it gets into like December, or January. Scatman Crothers for. Apparently, I read something where I guess the movie he did after this was it's the Clint Eastwood movie, Bronco Billy, or Bronco. Is that what it is? Yeah, Bronco Billy. Kubrick does the take after take after take after take. And apparently, Clint Eastwood's very laid back. He does like one take if that's all he needs. Apparently, like after they did one take, Scatman Crothers started crying because it wasn't like working with Stanley and having to do take after take after take. But I thought about that. That's the notorious thing is he does so many takes, and he's notorious for that. People are like, why? Part of it's like he just wants to get actors out of their own way. Because, like the editor said, well, Jack would do the first take would be brilliant. Jack would be fucking brilliant, and then the next takes he would start to get tired. and he would get a little lazier, and then you could see he was counting, seeing how much longer he could take, and then he would just go completely over the top. And then that's what Stanley usually used. But I was thinking about the takes. Stanley doesn't really do a lot of cutting if he doesn't have to. A lot of his takes are long takes, which you do oneers and takes like that. Like I shot Sunday on my new film, and of course, the most difficult one to get are the wide, long takes where you've got all this coordination going and all this stuff going. And if one little thing's off or one little thing doesn't work, so I think that's the difference between Stanley is like so much of the movies are one take, long takes without cuts. They're steady cam moves. And he's so precise about being center frame, being symmetrical, being like everything. So I think and this is back before, I think he did have, this is one of the first movies he did where he had the teleplayback where he could watch it on video.
Yep.
But, before that, you had to wait till you saw the dailies. So I think he was just making sure, hey, I got what I need. And maybe he went overboard. I won't say he didn't go overboard by having like people do 50 takes of the same shot or whatever it is. But at the same time, he'll know he has what he needed. Somewhere in there, the perfect take is there.
Those are my favorite type of filmmakers because I prefer that type of filmmaking style of the Stanley Kubrick or John Carpenter over some of today's where they're relying too much on edits. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'd rather have something from Stanley Kubrick than say the what's his name, the director of Quantum of Solace and World War Z, who completely relies on edits.
Yeah. It's I think Roger Deakins was talking about like a lot of filmmakers today don't have the confidence that more people who really know their craft and know the process and know what they want. They know they're going to get it, and they know when they don't have it. And he goes, it takes courage to keep it in a one shot, to not rely on, like, that's one thing that set Spielberg apart when he came along, is he does a lot of long takes and oneers and doesn't cut unless he has to. And that's one of those things people don't fucking realize. I hear people say, oh, they're stuck compared to today. No. These guys were disciplined. They knew their fucking shit. And you just don't see it because you're not a fucking filmmaker. Like that, all that cutting stuff, that's the easy stuff. Like when so when you can sit there, I'm going to cut to this, I'm going to cut to that, or hey, I need 40 cuts in this scene. Yeah, it's overkill. Let the actors move around the frame. You do it in your blocking, plan, and execute it. And have the confidence not to rely on coverage.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I really need to. I've watched The Shining so many times, and there's a lot of things that you say that I need to go back and pay more attention to, like oneers and stuff like that. I never really paid attention to the shots, and so I was like you were talking about how everything was like center frame and all that. I don't pay attention to that stuff as much as I probably need to.
That's one of the things that separates Kubrick is you're usually told as an artist not to put stuff center frame. Usually in film, you have the rule of thirds, which is you draw 2 lines across and 2 lines down, and you put I would put your eye on that line here or over here. I would give 2/3 of the screen to you. The other third is for empty negative space. But he puts them right in the middle, and they usually tell you not to do that. But Kubrick, basically, that's his style. The Coen brothers also do it. And I think Tarantino do it. So there's a few people who do it, but it immediately gives you a different look and a style that's what he does. Stanley uses the symmetry and the center framing. He uses the dolly shots or the tracking shots, the zooms. He's got his go-tos that he uses, which if you watch his movies, they're all that way. There's symmetry, there's center frame, and they just feel different than everything else we see. To me, that's what I want in a filmmaker, like you said, Steph. Like, I want to see a filmmaker who has a vision, like a Wes Anderson. Whether you like Wes Anderson or not, he has a vision. When you see his movies, you know you're watching Wes Anderson's movies because of the way he frames everything and art designs everything and shoots it. Coen Brothers the same way.
Yeah, those are the ones that stand out too. I mean, there's so many filmmakers out there that are they're very kind of like cookie cutter in their execution, and you can't really tell them apart from one another, you know?
Yeah.
But,
I like Wes Anderson.
The other thing I want to know how, like, I read it was pan and scan. You know, like pan and scan is what they do when they do the full screen for television instead of the wide. So I don't think he shot it wide. I mean, I know every print I've seen has been the aspect ratio has been
Kubrick
more.
never shot anything wide, as far as I know.
Yeah. So, but like the scenes where he's
sure he never
using
shot.
the axe, the scene where he's using the axe, I don't think they're panning. I think it's pan. I think it's pan and scan. I think they're moving the screen. I think they shot it that way and did that because the way the movement is, it just doesn't look like someone's panning. It's a different effects.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe it was there and they're just panning and scanning in post. It's another thing to mention is everything's shot in camera except for the maze composite where Jack's looking at the maze and you see Wendy and Danny walking in it. That's the only like not in camera effect in the whole movie. Everything else was in camera. A lot of natural light, which is something Stanley does. So yeah, he's just one of the great filmmakers. I just adore his work. And this is usually the one, like I talked last week, Ray, this is usually the one that the Kubrick nerds say is his worst movie. And it's my favorite. And I don't know if it's because I'm a horror fan or what, but I love it.
it's my second favorite Kubrick movie.
What's your favorite?
Full Metal Jacket.
Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
I was going to say Eyes Wide Shut, and I was going to call him a pervert.
Clockwork Orange is probably my second favorite.
God damn it. He's got so many good movies.
Yeah. But then I love Paths of Glory, which is one that I don't know, have you seen that one with Kirk Douglas, his war movie?
Nope.
Fucking fantastic. It's one of his earliest before he did I think it was like right after The Killing maybe. But The Killing's really good. Killing was a huge influence on Reservoir Dogs. If you haven't seen that one, that's kind of his first really good movie. It's a heist movie, like late 50s or mid 50s.
Most of the stuff I saw that was Kubrick's, I saw after I saw Eyes Wide Shut, because that movie, seeing that in the theater, it influenced me to see more of his stuff that I hadn't seen. So it's been years since I've watched anything other than The Shining, Full Metal Jacket, or the bigger named ones. So I couldn't tell you. Clockwork Orange every year. I love that movie. That's probably my favorite.
After Strangelove.
Strangelove is great.
One from the early 2000s.
Spartacus.
My top
watched that a
five
month ago.
might change based off the last time I saw each movie, probably.
I did have something. If y'all, this book, I can't recommend this more. The Stanley Kubrick Archives book is phenomenal. And there was something in here I wanted to read because when I read it, I just fucking loved it because that's me. But it was actually about Clockwork Orange. But a guy had reviewed his movie, Clockwork Orange, and was really kind of negative about it. So Stanley actually wrote the paper to talk about this reporter. And he wrote, the guy's name was Hershinger. He said, Hershinger is probably quite sincere in what he feels, but what the whiteness what the witness feels, as the judge said, is not evidence. Because we always hear people like, well, I just feel it sucks, or it's my opinion, this movie sucks. But he's like, well, it's not how you feel, because that's not going to hold up in court. The judge says that's not evidence, how you feel about something.
That's
Yeah, it's just your opinion. And he says, Mr. Herchinger is no doubt a well-educated man, but the tone of his piece strikes me as also that of a well-conditioned man who responds to what he expects to find or has been told or has read about rather than to what he actually perceives A Clockwork Orange to be. Maybe he should deposit his grab bag of conditioned reflexes outside and go and see it again, this time exercising a little choice. I just fucking love that one. He said the guy, he would criticize it, but he wouldn't like cite any reason or any examples of what he didn't like about Clockwork Orange. He just kind of blanketed it.
What? Why does it take him so long between, or why is there a big gaps between projects?
His meticulousness. He's just he's. I mean, some projects he didn't get to make. Like apparently, he wanted to work with Jack before this to make a Napoleon movie, and that didn't happen. But I think it was just he's just detail oriented, and he works on them for years, and he plans on them for years, and it just comes down to the amazing amount of detail. Like they'll say, like he'll do scouting and stuff. Like there's so much stuff in his archives that was never used, photographs and just research and things that never even actually made it into a film, but were required or studied for the film. So it's just his. Maybe he just needed to be inspired because he talked about. They said because he never wrote a film by like an original script. He always worked from books or other literature, and they said why? He said, well, that's the only way. First of all, I love this. He says it keeps me from repeating myself. Like. Because that's the thing, you look at Kubrick, he made a heist movie, he made Spartacus, he made Lolita, Dr. Strangelove, Clockwork Orange, 2001, a Vietnam movie, a horror movie. He doesn't make the same fucking thing over and over. He's like, it's all different. Paths of Glory, you know. So he said it keeps me fresh. I'm not repeating myself. Also, if I'm adapting a book, I have the experience of reading that story for the first time like the audience does. Whereas if I wrote it, I don't have that experience, which is a sucky part about being a writer sometimes. Like, I don't get to experience it the way other people get to experience it. He goes, well, I got to read The Shining, and I got to experience that story, and I got to judge it fairly and, objectively because it wasn't mine. And but I think that's what it is. He came across The Shining. Apparently, his secretary said he would read books all the time, and she'd hear him if he got like 5 to 15 pages or what into the book, he'd just throw them against the wall. And so said I would just hear him from the other office, books hitting the wall. He goes, and he was reading The Shining, and I didn't hear it. I went, oh, you must like this one.
That's pretty good.
Well, do you want to talk anything about the whole problem with him and Stephen King at all? Because there was something that popped up in that documentary I was watching, 237, where they changed the color of the car and all that. Did you hear about this?
The red car that's like broken down.
Yeah, that Carruthers passes.
Yeah,
it's smashed, saying this is no longer King's vehicle. This is Kubrick's vehicle.
Yeah. I had also heard that they mentioned in the book that when they made the TV version, that they only Stanley owned the rights, I guess film rights to it, so he had to sign off for them to be able to do that. And the only way he wrote it in there that King could no longer publicly shit on the movie or compare it to his book or anything like that, or say shit. Yeah.
How long did that last?
I don't know. Maybe after he died, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, he still talks down about it.
Yeah.
But like I said earlier in the show, he endorsed the Dark Tower, so fuck him.
He's That was probably a money move.
Yeah.
It didn't make very much money, did it?
No, well, I mean, the thing between The Shining and Dark Tower is like at least the Kubrick Shining still had a lot of elements from The Shining. It was still The Shining.
Yeah.
The Dark Tower movie was, who fucking knows what it was? It was
I didn't.
nothing.
A mash of like 3 books.
Any of the books whatsoever, it was garbage. But he supported it.
Well, I guess I'll never watch it then. So, all right.
Well, one thing I mentioned the Grady scene. We should just talk about scenes, some of the other scenes that we haven't touched on, because the movie has so many amazing, iconic scenes, like the scene where he's talking to Grady in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Kubrick purposely crosses the line. It jumps from one side to the other side, and the reason he did that is because Jack is becoming Grady. They're becoming just like each other. Because that's what you usually do. You don't jump the line because, like, if I'm shooting you, here's Jack Nicholson and here's Delbert Grady. They always need to be on that side of the screen, but they switch in the reverse shot, so it's like they're both becoming. And that's the other thing. Like, there's dual Jacks. Like, there's the Jack that's Jack Torrance, and then there's a Jack that's always been here, as he says. You've always been here. You've always been the caretaker. But in just the Lloyd scene, I used to know that word for word.
Yeah.
So the conversation where he's talking to Lloyd.
Well, I didn't get to say my scariest scene earlier because none of it really got me. I was a teenager when I saw The Shining for the first time, and I was desensitized by everything I'd seen. But the movie, you talked about, the setting, the music, the atmosphere of the movie really sets you in the mood. So it grips you when you start the movie. But my favorite scene in the entire movie is whenever Wendy's going up the steps backwards and he wants to bash her brains in, bash him right the fuck in.
I love that scene.
Yeah, it's a really good scene, and even I don't know anything technical about shooting movies, but the way that shot I really like. I like how half-hearted her swings are until the last one too. You're half-hearted.
Yeah, like so she has.
She's holding the bat like way up.
Yeah, it's like she has no. Well, she has no. She's just not someone who's a fighter. That's why she's put up with him all this time. And the point where she doesn't really, I don't think she does that full swing until he's actually really close to grabbing her.
Mm-hmm. Well, she hits his hand, and then he's like, "What the fuck?" Like he didn't expect her to even hit the hand, and then she takes the second swing and hits him in the face. But the other thing that kind of got me is like she was able to drag him all the way to the kitchen, wherever the hell the kitchen was, also, which was always got me. It's like, how did she drag his ass, and how was he out that long?
I think it's also a reluctancy to not hurt him because she doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those things where, I remember getting in a fight with a friend once. He was, I don't know what was up his ass that day, but he was like, I was probably 12, 13 years old. And he's like wanting to fight me, and I didn't want to fight him because he's my friend. I didn't want to hurt him.
Right.
So I was throwing half-ass punches just to kind of like get him away from me because I didn't want to fucking swing in the middle because he's my friend. So I was like she doesn't want to hit her husband with a bat, So it's like, just maybe I'll swing a little and he'll like leave me alone.
No, you kept pushing her too.
Wendy. Lights of my life. I love that. Like, you've had your own fucking life to think things over.
Yeah, I like when you mock her too. Anyway.
Another thing I noticed when they're driving out in the car and they're talking about the Donner Party, and he says, "That's all right. I know all about cannibalism. I heard it on the television." And Jack smiles and go, "See, it's all good. Heard it on the television." There's like a disdain there because he's a writer and he's got books everywhere. So he's one of those people who's like, probably thinks that television rots your brains and television's a bad thing. You never see Jack watching TV you see them watching TV.
Oh,
He
yeah.
probably thinks,
On television.
yeah, so he's like, oh, see, he learned it on the television. That piece of shit rotting your brains thing. Mm.
Yeah, that's fun. I wonder what he was watching that he heard that on the television. I know it can't. Yeah, the bar scene's a great scene. I mean, one of my favorite scenes also is, and we talked about it again, was the scene where he's typing and she comes in and interrupts him. We did talk about that in length, but I just wanted to say that's one of my favorites as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Just the pulling of the paper with the musical cue.
yeah.
And even when she finds it and you just see that dolly track over from around the corner, his presence coming up behind her, and he just says, "How do you like it?" I mean, that's terrifying. That's a terrifying moment.
Yeah.
She turns around and she's completely terrified of her husband. And that other scene that's really creepy is when Danny goes upstairs to get his fire truck, and Jack's just sitting there staring and on the bed and goes, "Come here for a minute." Like, this is something really creepy. And I'd heard, is it in 237 that they talked about, some people believe that there's a theme that like he was molesting Danny?
Oh no, I didn't hear that in there.
But that's an unspoken thing that's implied in that.
Ugh, I don't even think
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I'd rather think about him as the abusive drunk rider, not the sexual abusive drunk rider.
Yeah.
I mean, I never got that
How he
impression.
pulled his arm out of his socket.
Yeah, I don't think.
Moving on.
Well, the other thing we did talk about is how Stanley presents. This movie isn't a gothic horror movie in that he didn't shoot the hotel dark and like a horror film. It's like lit. It's beautiful. He gives us so much time of Ullman just walking us around to every room, and it's like, this is a beautiful place. This is it's almost comforting and warm. Everything's really cool. So that was something Kubrick didn't want to do. Is he didn't want to shoot it like a horror movie, because he's introduced us to all of this, made us comfortable. When things are going bad, it's that much more alarming and off-putting, or just kind of like, this is not how this is supposed to be. It's the sun's shining. You know, there's so much light. That's another thing. Since he won't get on a plane, so they shot everything in England on sound stages. They built that hotel, and because he needed to have that daylight with the snow outside, which is a hugely bright light,
Yeah.
they had these very, very powerful lights to light all that light coming in the windows. It was so light, and they had no air conditioning. It was like 100, 120 degrees on set. And the lounge, the Colorado lounge, caught on fire at one point. I think they had to rebuild it. But also something cool, Ray, is they shot some of that snow and all those scenes or whatever. They shot Empire Strikes Back there as well. Some of that.
Really?
And the well of Souls in Raiders of the Lost Ark was shot where that Colorado lounge was too.
That's pretty cool.
That same space.
Have you ever taken a look at the floor plans for the Overlook?
Yeah, they don't match.
No, that's another thing that just popped in my head. I was looking at them on my phone just now. Yeah, they were talking about that documentary. That thing's just resonating with me every time I watch it. Like, there's so much to like listen or think about and everything, but I just remember the floor plans and how they're in Ullman's office, which was recreated in Dr. Sleep. We had that impossible window because his office wasn't going out. There's nothing, it's blocked in from everything. And then, how even the bathroom in the gold room, how that actually would have gone into where the bar is based on how they went into the room, and like the floor plan was. And Danny was the whole scene following him. He was upstairs and downstairs at the same time. He turned a corner, he was downstairs. He turned another corner, he's back upstairs. They talked about symbolism with that, even with the carpet. Like how I was talking to you guys a little bit about the liftoff of the Apollo. and the whole idea that Kubrick filmed the moon landing,
Yeah.
that whole business. I don't know if that's true or not. None of us will ever know. But
Yeah.
the whole
There
idea
are people who believe it.
that people do believe it. No, people also believe the laser started forest fires in California. Anyway, but there's the really cool thing about some of the shots he did line up is the way the carpet was and the way Danny was sitting in the middle there with his with the shirt Nate wearing actually. The ball rolls down a track, and then it like I think it cuts to a close up of Danny, and then when you go back to the overhead shot, the carpet's reversed, so the track is gone, so he's blocked in. And
Yeah.
That's one of the things about this documentary is they talk about a lot of the symbolism that within just the shots of. There's also a lot of crazy shit like about that the Indian people that they had to. What did they say in the movie? They had to fight off people while building the Overlook because they
The Indians. Yeah.
and they say that there's I can't recommend that documentary enough. There's so much in there.
Yeah, they're talking about it's like the genocide of the Native Americans, and it's representing modern America because it's built on an Indian burial ground, and the place is decorated with Native American stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like a fabricated that stuff meant something to the Indians, but here it's just decor and decoration. And like it's just a white man's like America, like they built that there, and like
white man,
and even like the racism in it, referring to Dick, by the N word, and they don't want him there because he's not one of them. And
also both Grady and Jack both sounded extremely like they didn't want to say that word. Ever notice that you watch their faces? They're very uncomfortable not saying that. So
yeah,
at least that's what I thought.
Yeah, that's one thing. Also, I noticed I've rereading the book this week because I hadn't read it since the '80s. Dick Halloran, like Stephen King, wrote him very stereotypical. Like he talks all jive and stuff in the book, and it's like Scatman Crothers doesn't talk that way in the movie. Like, I mean, he talks like Catman Crothers, but it's not like, "Hey, brother, hey, man," like the book is.
You watched Cannibal Holocaust?
Cannibal Holocaust. Well, Danny
wants to watch Cannibal Holocaust.
He
that's funny. Yeah.
One of the big influences I didn't know this was Stanley loved Eraserhead, and that was one of the big influences on The Shining, and he made the cast watch it. That, The Exorcist, and Rosemary's Baby were the movies that he was making the cast watch to get in the mood for what he was trying to do with this. And I didn't know he was actually offered The Exorcist to direct it, with Jack Nicholson playing Karras. Did they say anything about other casting options? Because I heard a few casting, like De Niro was up for Jack, and Robin Williams was up for Jack.
I don't know about how that would be.
And he said that
Robin Williams, really?
Yeah, he said Stanley watched Taxi Driver and thought De Niro wasn't psychotic enough, and he watched Mork and Mindy and thought Robin was too psychotic.
I guess I can agree with that.
And Harry Dean Stanton was, I think, going to play Lloyd, or was up for that. And Stanley wanted, this is weird, Stanley wanted Slim Pickens to play Dick Halloran. Slim Pickens wouldn't do anything after working with him on Dr. Strangelove. Didn't want to work with Stanley again.
I'm trying to see if there's any alternate casting or anything like that. If I can spell things. I'm having a bad night. Alternate cast. Yeah, just Robin Williams and Robert De Niro, the only ones that keep coming up. I wonder if they had anybody else in mind for Wendy.
They said something about Harrison Ford was also up for Jack.
I don't know if that would have worked. It says that Marlon Brando and Jack Nicholson were both up for The Exorcist. You should see this picture. I'll send it to you guys. It's dumb, but it's funny to me. Anyway, let's do final thoughts. Wrap it up. I've had a bad internet night. I don't know what's going on. It's a picture of Robin Williams putting his face through the axe scene wall. Oh my god. It's good. Anyway, let's do final thoughts. Seth, why don't you start final thoughts off tonight?
Final thoughts. It's a great horror movie. It's definitely one of my favorites. It's a very effective movie with the way it was filmed and with the score, especially. That was something even my youngest daughter pointed out when I showed it to her last winter, was how eerie the music was and how it added to it. And like I said earlier, I like the movie better than the book. I like the book. It's not one of my favorite Stephen King novels, but I prefer Kubrick's movie. It's better. And that's my final thoughts. Back to you.
Jared, go ahead.
Well, it's just one of those movies that warms the cockles of your hearts during the wintertime. And then you realize it's a wonderful expose about the complete destruction of the family dynamic. So, I mean, we all stated, like, we saw it when we were like 12 years old. Like, this movie will stand the test of time completely. And Jack Nicholson's performance will forever be, related to this movie. God loves Shelley Duvall for all the bullshit she had to go through. Like, I don't know how terrible it really was, but I mean, it showed up great on screen. I really don't have much to say about it.
Go ahead, Nate.
We've all seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, it's a masterpiece. No one can tell me otherwise. Like Seth, I just reread the novel because I hadn't read it in 30 years, just to kind of reaffirm myself with it. And yeah, it's not. I agree with Kubrick. It's got a lot of great ideas in it. Really imaginative, very strong plot, but yes, cluttered like most of his books can be. And I think Kubrick just got it down to simplicity, but also beyond what we see on the surface, because it's just what he does. Like, there's so many layers. I just said they got a whole documentary about all these things people have read into it. But the thing is, that documentary doesn't even touch. It's not even the tip of the iceberg on all the analysis. And if you go on YouTube and look up Analyze or like The Shining, you're going to go through a wormhole of just endless people who have all these theories and things they've noticed and things. You will never fully understand that movie. And half of it's bullshit, and half of it's real. And the thing is, like, because you could see things in there, like furniture moving and, like you said, things like changing. It's all intentional because we know how anal retentive he was with detail. Just even like the maze, like we could see that the maze isn't actually there on the exteriors because it wasn't there. And you would think, well, he would be bothered by that, being as detail-oriented as he is. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those movies. I just, like, today said, you know what? I don't know why I don't list it as my top 10 horror films, but it's just moved into my, like, number 5 favorite movie of all time.
You were ahead of Star Wars.
I put it ahead of Star Wars because it's one of those things.
Notice how I didn't comment on your post.
Well, I love Star Wars.
Liked it.
I love fucking Star Wars, but, like, I had to get real about it. Like I said, there's, like, these movies where, just from the filmmaker, when I need to study and learn and put something on where, like, get my, like, the real motivation, this is one of the movies I turn to. This is one of the movies that has left a stain on me as far as how to handle this situation or how to handle that. And because it has that big of an influence on me, it's like, I got to have this in my top 10. Star Wars doesn't really inspire my filmmaking because I don't really make movies anywhere near. I made a Star Wars fan film and I was completely out of my element. Even though I love them, I don't have a desire to make those type of movies or tell those type of stories. The Shining is the type of story I would fucking love to make. I would love to tell this story, these kind of stories. I love atmosphere. That's what I missed when I made Star Wars. I love atmosphere, and The Shining is one of the best, most effective movies about atmosphere ever made because I just feel the dread. I feel being there. I feel I'm stuck there with them when I watch it. And that's what I like. A lot of my favorite films are like that, where I just feel like I'm immersed and I'm there with them in this place, and I can't get out, and I'm stuck with this madman, and it's just this descent and this slow moving with the heartbeat score, the music, everything's just driving us to, just like Taxi Driver is my favorite movie. That movie just drives you to violence, drives you to an explosion of violence. That's what we see with Jack Torrance. That's what we see with Travis Bickle. I just like the type of storytelling.
Just the slow evolution to madness.
I need to update my top 10 horror movie list or whatever. I do think The Shining should fall in there somewhere. It's one of those movies that comes along where people have heard of it, but sometimes I've never seen it. And so many people will experience The Shining with me, and I get to watch them after I've seen it, of course. Because I love it when I see a movie that compels me to buy it or rewatch it immediately. And The Shining did that. I didn't get to say that earlier, but that's what it did for me when I saw it. I think I was 16 because I said it before. When I got my license, I got a membership to Hollywood Video, and I went up there and they had A to Z. You can rent 10 movies at a time, and that's how I spent my weekends. Was watching.
I remember Hollywood Video.
Yeah, man. And when I got to The Shining, because that was the first time I'd seen it, and I watched it, and I was like, I'm watching this again, and then I'm gonna go buy it. And I went to fucking buy it. So I'm beyond frustrated. So I'm gonna end the episode.
Froze.
Okay. I can't hear anything sometimes. That's not happening tonight. I don't remember what we're talking about next week, but I'm going to turn on. I'm ending the show because I can't handle it anymore.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks for watching.
Have a good evening. We'll maybe see you next Tuesday. It's working now, son of a bitch.